It's the surrounding mountain ranges that make the Silicon Valley a valley. One of them is contained in the Sierra Azul Open Space Preserve. It's just south of San Jose and Los Gatos. For the first time since the Amu Matsun tribe inhabited and cared for this land over 200 years ago, Sierra Azul Summit, one of the highest peaks in the Bay Area, Mount Umunhum, is now open to the public. For millions of years, Mount Umunhum has been shaped by the close proximity of the San Andreas Fault system. The mountain's unique geology and low nutrient soils are home to many rare native plants. It's a huge preserve and a mountain full of stories. Most of us know Mount Umunhum only by the tower that's on the summit. There are many stories to be told, but we'll start there.
It was called an FPS-24. The radar antenna itself was about 150 feet wide and about 25 feet high or so. And it turned 20 times a minute. Now I'm 80 years old, and it's a long time gone during the Cold War. It was very, very frightening.
The radar sites were built to tell us when the Russians were probing with their bombers, because they would come in and expect and want to record the response of the military to see what the time was, where any openings might be should the unthinkable event occurred where there would actually be a war. They wanted to maximize their success potential. So in the early days, there were the plexiglass shields and the guys writing backwards with grease pens, and they were actually calculating the fuel burn rate of the planes that were going out to intercept the Russian bombers. They were responsible for telling them, okay, you've only got X number of minutes of fuel left, time to turn around and come back.
Well, say a Russian bomber is coming in, that huge thing, that Tu-95 carrying atomic weapons. That particular airplane or flight of airplanes would be picked up by interceptor jets. F-100s, they carried atomic weapons, by the way. Here's the incoming flight, and he'd pass them and do a 20-degree turn, shoot an atomic weapon. His partner would do the same thing, behind him shoot another one. Now these rockets called Genies would, with atomic tips, would have a kill radius of 2 miles. So in other words, one little rocket would knock out a flight of airplanes.
The normal manning of a radar site, usually around 125 people enlisted and officers. Areas like Almaden, where you had families living up there also, you could have probably 220 people living up on the site in the base housing. So that mandated that there was some things for people to do up there. So that's why you had the swimming pool and a 2-lane bowling alley. And you can imagine being a kid up on that hilltop with all those amenities, and they just had a blast. There was a Boy Scout troop up there and do all kinds of camping things and hiking around the mountain. Mid-Penn would be proud of the start they got with that up there.
And behind the mountain on the Santa Cruz side, we could hike down to, if you wanted to walk that far, down to that dam, which is called Lexington Dam.
The air station has largely been demolished and the land is mostly restored, but we've kept the tower. A trail system once again connects hikers, cyclists, and equestrians to the summit where Mr. Geronimo did his work. The lower pitches of the mountain have been used for years, and their uses have evolved considerably. Oh dear, there's a story here too.
Okay, I know the mountain is hugely important to Air Force vets, Native Americans, hikers, birders, and biologists. But we cyclists love the mountain too, and here's one of our stories. Every fall, this man makes a post on the website of record for the mountain biking world.
He throws down the challenge. Sometime in the next 5 months, ride your bike up what we riders call dog meat. It's the steepest part of 3 really steep trails that enter Sierra Azul from Los Gatos. If you can make it to the top without putting a foot down, without dabbing as we mountain bikers say, well then you report your happy success to Squasho, and he'll post a list of all successful riders when the contest is over. You'll be famous amongst the 20 or so that read this thread.
It's all on the honor system, and yes, it's kind of silly, but how serious can a bunch of old guys in Lycra be?
Let us now deliver a quick primer on the Sierra Azul road and trail system.
All motorists will take Hicks Road to its highest point at Jacques Ridge. From there they will travel west, climbing 5 miles up Umnum Road to the summit. For exceptionally intrepid hikers, cyclists, and equestrians, there are routes up from the valley below. 3 start in Los Gatos. 1 from the top of Kennedy Road, the Kennedy Trail, and 2 more come up from the Lexington Reservoir, the Priest Rock Trail, and the Limekiln Trail. All 3 eventually come together about 5 miles and about 2,000 feet up the mountain atop El Sombroso, a ridge below the summit. All 3 routes are at times surprisingly steep. Bring lots of water, food, and sun protection. Cyclists are required to wear helmets. From El Sombroso, the route will drop 1,000 feet as it descends 3.5 miles to the base of Barlow Road. One can also drive to the top of Hicks Road at Jacques Ridge, park, and then climb 600 feet over 3.5 miles on the eastern segment of the Woods Trail to the bottom of Barlow Road. Barlow, it's a lot like the routes up El Sombroso. For the most part, surprisingly steep, 2 miles and 700 feet of climbing. Happily, though, you do have the option of bypassing the Barlow climb completely by driving to the parking at Bald Mountain. Finally, all of these routes converge on the best part of any hike or ride to the summit. Mid-Penn has just finished and opened a 3.7-mile trail to the summit. This modern, not-so-steep trail will lure visitors through watershed lands, 1,200 feet up Guadalupe Creek Canyon, past a spectacular overlook, and onto the summit. Oh, by the way, many of Sierra Azul's trails are part of the Bay Area Ridge Trail.
Mr. Rascal mentioned those students of the natural environment, those birders and biologists. They have been a key part of the team that helped open the summit.
One of the things that's kind of special about going up a mountain like Mount Ummanham, that's a really tall mountain, is you have different creatures and different plants all the way along as you keep on going up. Because of the elevation, it's sort of like a layer cake of different communities of animals and plants. So one of the things that makes this place special is it's just taller than everything else. So there's, in a sense, an extra layer that you can't find in some of the other hills and mountains in the area. It's just because of its overall size and height. It makes it different from any place you can go to in the Bay Area.
The other thing too is its placement in the Santa Cruz Mountains means that it has a dry side and a wet side because of where the moisture is coming in from the ocean.
If we look at Bald Mountain up there, we see grassland, and it's so exposed that the wind dries things out
there, and it's also right up on top, so gravity dries it out, and we have then a grassland top on that hill that makes it also a place where you might go and even see grasshopper sparrows, birds that you would not see if you went watching for birds over in this other hillside. So if you put it all together, it's like a mosaic of both elevational layers with sort of a wet and a dry side, means that we have real diversity here that you cannot find in some other places in the Bay Area. We're on top of Mount Amanhum right now, which is an Ohlone word for hummingbird, the resting place of the hummingbird. And there's a reason why the people named the top of the mountain after the hummingbirds, is that the hummingbirds actually visually come to the top of the mountain when they're migrating, and they move through the ridges. And if you're sitting here in a lot of, the spring and in the fall, you will see hummingbirds zooming by, and numbers of them sometimes. And that's the reason why the people that used to come here named it after hummingbirds, because they would see these hummingbirds and figured it was a special place for the hummingbirds, and indeed it is. Hummingbirds love it up here. I was brought up here to Mount Amanhum about 5-6 years ago for the first time to look at bird populations in their communities. We found nesting purple martins. Purple martins are like a big swallow, and in California they're really quite rare and and declining in population. And they had not been seen as a breeding species in Santa Clara County for many, many years. And hopefully, if you come up here in the summer, especially between that May and July period, you'll see these big, dark swallows. Those are the male purple martins. And then the females are kind of grayish. And when they're not here, and let's say you come here in winter and you're thinking, well, where did those purple martins go? It's pretty amazing what they do. They actually fly all the way to southern Brazil in the time that they're not here. This is a really great place to see golden eagles. Red-tailed hawks, sometimes Cooper's hawks flying over. Up top here we have a lot of gray pine, and in these gray pines, sometimes if you're lucky, you'll see in the summer a red-breasted nuthatch, which is a bird of real high elevations in our part of the world. So the nuthatch tells you that you're on top of the world. So if you're coming up here with your family and you're taking a picture of some of the vistas, keep in mind that people weren't allowed up here for many years. What you're seeing is a brand new part of the Bay Area that's accessible to you. And not only is it a really cool looking place, but it's unique. This is one of the highest mountains we have in the entire Bay Area. So what you're seeing is really an image, a picture you wouldn't have been able to take before.
A big part of the recent Amanhum story is its transformation from abandoned air station to something closer to its natural state.
We started the public planning process to find out what the public wanted to see up there. And we interviewed 30 separate stakeholder groups. We had 18 public meetings, many committee meetings, many board meetings. And what we really heard from the public was they really wanted to see the view. They really wanted just to be able to relax, go up there, bring their families up there. You can see the Sierra Nevada from up there. It was a 3-part effort to get the site to look the way it does today. The first was to clean up the site, and that's removing the hazardous materials, about 300 dump truck loads that left the mountain. The next part was to actually dismantle all of the building materials, recycle as much as possible on site. 97% of the building materials were recycled, and only 3% went to the landfill. And then the final effort in getting the mountain to look the way it did was, of course, the construction. When the Air Force built out the radar station up there, they chopped off the top of it, if you will, and they used that as a platform for the Air Force station. One of the main goals for us was to recreate as close as possible that natural topography, to recreate some of the natural drainages and swales and peaks to the extent we could, and then build the trails around that. So the visitor gets a more organic experience of actually reaching a summit peak. It was equally as important to us to revegetate using the native plant species. We collected seeds from the flowering plants that were adjacent to the area that we wanted to restore, grew those in a nursery off-site, and actually replanted those plants. Visitors will not see a lush green landscape because these plants have to go in the ground very, very small in order to survive. They have to go in small and then develop the fine root system from there. They have a much greater chance of survival. So what will appear to be a rocky, barren landscape, if visitors look very closely, they will see small plants everywhere. And we're asking people to please help us help the plants get established by staying on the existing paths, not taking shortcuts. When we started to develop the site plan for the summit, we wanted to honor all of those elements: the Native Californian history, the veterans' history, and the natural history. And we have the radar tower as a big symbol of the Cold War era Air Force Station. And we also have a Native American ceremonial circle. It's not just for Native Americans, it's for everyone's enjoyment. But it was developed and designed and built in collaboration with a local tribal band, the Amamutsin, who have not had an opportunity to dance up there in several hundred years. I believe it's 200 years. And they're going to have the opportunity to do that as a result of this effort, which is a very exciting moment for everybody. I think visitors may not notice that we tried to keep a very low profile with everything we designed up there, but they're certainly going to feel it. They're going to feel that the mountain is the story. The views are the story.
I want to jump in here with a note on the road. It's narrow, windy, and steep. When you drive it on your own, always observe the speed limit. On the way down, put your car in low gear and take your time. Watch out for bicyclists on blind curves. We also wanted the summit to pay its respects to its former occupants, the U.S. Air Force and the Native Americans. Deciding how to do this wasn't easy. We conclude with Val Lopez, chairman of the Amamutsin Tribal Band, in conversation with retired U.S. Air Force Captain Mike Cook.
I grew up in Morgan Hill. The first 5-6 years of my life, I spent a time living in a tent along creeks and streams. It was a very small community, and I can remember, running away from home regularly and riding my bike like 6-8 miles up to Anderson Dam and spending the day up there, and then getting hungry and coming home. We have been in the area for 800, 900, 1,000 generations or more. And so it was, this is exactly where we belong. There was actual genocide to the Native people here in California. Today, the majority of our people live at or below poverty. The majority of our people work at minimum wage jobs. And then the other thing that we have, there's a thing called historic trauma. And historic trauma is where you have taken hope away from a people for 5, 6, 7 generations, where there's no hope to pass on to the next generation. There's no concept of love and taking care of each other. So a lot of our tribe today, what we're working on is restoring our health, our psychological, emotional, intellectual health, and that's only going to be possible through restoring our culture.
That's what the summit looks like as of Friday. But the thing I've wondered about, there's been a little give and take over how this area should be used, and like it or not, you guys share the best real estate around right now. Can you make your peace with it, or is it?
I'll let you go first.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good use of the space, and we've always wanted, well, not just we being people that were stationed up here, veterans, but every meeting that MidPen had, it was 99% of the people at the meeting wanted the radar tower to stay because people identified with it. People saw that the whole time they were growing up. They wanted it to remain. We wanted it to remain to honor the efforts and sacrifices of the people that were stationed here over the years. And I know myself and a lot of the other people that were stationed up here are ecstatic that the top of the mountain is finally being opened to the general public, because as Val knows, this is a special place. The views from up here are fantastic. There's so much to see and do up here that it's high time that the general public gets a chance to go up and enjoy what we're familiar with.
When we were first contacted by Mid-Penn to come in and asked us that we'd like to talk to them as a stakeholder of Mount and they asked us, what our vision was and what we would like to happen here. What we thought of is that it's a place of our creation story. It's a very sacred site to our people. And what we wanted to do was to restore the sacredness and the prayers and the ceremonies to the mountain. And so when we met with Mid-Penn, we asked it to be restored as a place for prayer. And that's why we asked for the sacred circle, so that people can come up here when they have time, when they need to heal, when they need to make tough decisions. Whenever we see the tower, our members, our tribe, like most native tribes, they have great respect for warriors. A lot of our members have gone to war, and I lost a brother in Vietnam, for example, and so we have a lot of respect for warriors. And so when they asked us about the tower, we said that we respect the veterans' view of what they would like, and we would support that. And so when they asked about the tower staying, we agreed.
When people come up here and enjoy all the beauty, it's that we needed to borrow a spot on this beautiful hill for 40 years, 30 years, whatever it was, to stay vigilant, to protect everyone that lived down there.
No, the sacredness and the spirituality of the land is still here. And it's our job to restore it and to bring it back and make it stronger.
Oh yo, yo quiera, entre imagino, oh yo quiera, oh yo quiera, quiera,
There is more that could be said, but now is the time for you to enjoy it yourselves. After all, it's been 200 years.